we have been focusing quite a lot on children and some of the challenges that they either would be facing at school. Yesterday, remember, we brought you some of the statistics around rape cases that have been reported in the 2022-23 financial year. And these are cases reported to police. But tonight, as we follow up on some of the issues that are really affecting children, I'll bring in Thembekile here. We're talking about bullying. And Thembekile, this is quite a huge issue, especially when you think about the fact that you do have parents who simply don't even know sometimes how to deal or even spot the signs.
And the problem with bullying, right, is that for most families, unfortunately, parents don't become aware until it's gotten to a point where so much damage has been done. But in the worst cases, we've had children die. I'm reminded of Lufuno, the teenager in Limpopo. We saw a video of her being assaulted by another pupil, Bongiwe. And then from the humiliation that even added to, she ultimately took her own life.
And as we talk about this, Thembekile, right, let's just look at some of the signs, the warning signs for parents who are especially worried that maybe their children might be bullied in school or not even aware of what's going on. You may see a sudden decrease interest in school, and there's a loss of interest in favorite school activities. And sometimes, Thembekile, you know, the school activities, you know, disinterest. You may think that maybe your child is simply exhausted and possibly because homework is so much, but you need to look closely into this one.
They talk less, they become irritable as well, mood changes.
And you see now, even this one, Thembekile, when you think about the fact that a child may prefer the company of adults, and it's something we don't think there's anything untoward.
And you know what I think what's alarming for me is that in the last few weeks we were learning that about 500 bullying cases were reported nationally in just the first quarter of 2025. And those are just the ones, Bongiwe, that have actually been reported.
And especially because, Thembekile, you're also seeing schools that also appear to be overwhelmed and not sure how to deal with this particular matter. But also some of the signs for you parents to look out for, there's sudden mood changes, and it confirms that particular story we ran yesterday of that teenager in the Northwest, Thembekile, and also coming home with unexplained scratches, bruises and torn clothing.
And the fear, and you touched on this earlier, the fear of the children themselves to speak, because sometimes they feel that by reporting, you make it worse. I suppose the other thing, especially when it comes to what parents can do, is to open that channel of communication, right?
And be aware as well, Thembekile, of, you know, the friends that your children keep as company, especially if they're in the wrong places at the wrong time. Are you seeing them hanging out with, you know, children that may either be using substances, but at the same time, one sign to look out for as parents, please be aware of this, especially when you think about the fact that right now there's talk of suicide. There are a number of hotlines that teenagers can talk to, but Thembekile, if your child is simply going to be speaking about potentially taking their own life, asking questions about how this can be done, speaking about some friends that they've, you know, maybe witnessed, a Lufuno, for example, then parents need to start being concerned.
We also need to ask those questions, right, about at the boys' schools we've had in the last few years, worrying elements about the orientation rituals, which in effect we've learned are just bullying of children. And I think I'm curious, in fact, if parents have started to say to schools, what is it that kids in grade 8 are put through as part of this orientation? Who supervises it to make sure that it's not abuse? And
Thembekile, you're mentioning quite an important point there. And as we're speaking about parents and what they can do, also they need to ensure that their children are in fact taken to the school, that there is a principal or an official involved at the school when it comes to them asking for an investigation. Because I think sometimes we can dismiss children and think that as parents, maybe they're just not wanting to go to school, but it's important to ensure that you find out what happened and then make sure there's an investigation. And the issue of speaking out, right? Standing up for themselves, walking that line of assertive versus aggressive. I'm curious about, perhaps you could even get an expert on this to explain how do you do that for a teenager who's already going through hormonal changes and other things, and you're trying to make friends, but you also have to stand up for yourself. And at the same time, even we as parents, right, another layer added to this conversation, Thembekile, is that you then are trying to speak to your child, but they simply do not want to talk to you. They do not want to, you know, be seen to be weaklings and all of that in school. So where do you draw the line even as a parent? Because also you need to be aware of the fact that your child may be embarrassed by the fact that you've chosen to go to the school, and be able to ask for this particular, investigation. So certainly a fine line there, Tembegile, for the parents, but also it's important that the schools do take action.
And that the schools don't cover it up, because some of them, especially talk about reputation, right? Because they don't want to look like they are failing in their duty to the children. So sometimes they kick something down the line where actually if you just brought in the mother or the father, maybe we could have found mediation or a solution.
And I wonder if for the schools, Tembegile, they do take this issue of the code of conduct very seriously, especially when you think about the fact that do your pupils know that bullying is not allowed in schools? Do your pupils know where to go when they have such a problem? Is there even an anonymous line that maybe a pupil might be able to go and speak to? And also, what becomes some of the possible causes of, what you are seeing unfolding before your eyes?
Right, and we're going to continue this focus throughout the week here on SABC News. We're looking at the rights of children, especially the abuses that children suffer in this country. We've just been reporting on that child in the Eastern Cape who's believed to have been raped, who's in fact confirmed to have been raped, a little girl, on school grounds is where it's alleged to have happened. So we'll continue to look at the various other issues of children's well-being in democratic South Africa.